So, we're starting the Redacted Culture Cast, episode 97, with the guest who came on for episode 4. But now you get to actually introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jordan, Finance and Maneuver. I'm a part of a big team that is FM. Good to be here, happy to be hanging out.
Dude, it's good to see you. It's kind of ridiculous. I don't know how you talked me into this shit. But we're hanging down on the side of a cliff here and decided that this is where we're gonna start the episode. But I mean, you're not new to doing silly goose stuff.
I'm God's silliest goose.
Yeah, well, for now at least.
Oh.
We lost the beer on the climb, but that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, don't tell them the real story on that one.
Yeah,
It was
well,
on the climb.
it was on the fall.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, something about you gotta fall to pick yourself up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's do this. I'm gonna clip this in and do a little introduction on yourself.
All right. Marine Corps. Started Marine Corps after high school, did about 7 years. Got out December 2021, came back home and did a couple odd jobs before I started my financial practice, which is free financial advisory work for veterans. And now that we've built a bigger team, we do it for anybody that follows FM, which is pretty cool. Finance and Maneuver started May 21st of 2022, so we're just over a year now. Media, apparel, obviously the finance work and charity work. So find any way we can to get involved in the community and try to be a good influence.
Cool. Well, you were one of the first people that I really got to know when I moved down here. And since then, you brought a perspective that perhaps you were emblematic in a sense. To me, it reminded me of this whole idea of like community building. And as much as people talk about it, I got to see you do it. And so what was that like and what did that mean? And how does that go, dude?
It was incredible, man. Starting from nothing. It was a lonely experience being fresh out of the Marine Corps back home.
Yep.
So having the ability to bring people together from all around the country, bringing them, mutual talking point, the ability to communicate with one another, like-minded individuals all at different stages of life, to push and motivate each other, kind of guide each other in different professional and personal aspects. Mm-hmm. It's been really cool. So there's chapters in FM around the country now and a couple internationally. People get together, train, lift, shoot, whatever it is. Some of them fly together, some of them skydive. So it's not quite a big family, but sometimes it certainly feels like one.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure for some of these people it is.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see now as kind of like, there's a lot of things that you can complain about on the internet.
Oh yeah.
And in community building, like it's nice to see that some people are actually doing it. How much time do you want to spend on this wall before we get the hell out of here?
Well, the beer's gone, so there's not too much of a reason to hang out here anymore.
All right, let's head out. After you, man.
Good luck, man.
Yeah, we'll see you in a second.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll get to the studio. All right, so welcome to what I believe is still episode 67 or 97 of the Redacted Culture Cast. We've had you on. We tried this crazy intro thing earlier today, which
busted my ass and lost my beer.
Well, that's kind of what happens. Every once in a while, you fall down. But this is episode 97 of the Redacted Culture Cast, and if I'm off on the date, on the number, so be it. I'm excited to be here. You get to introduce yourself as usual. Go ahead.
All right. So, just in case that GoPro didn't do us too well on the mountain, I'm Jordan, representing Finance and Maneuver. Pretty big team, so I'm talking on behalf of everybody tonight. But I'm not the only one. I want to make that very clear in the beginning. I've been running this company for just over a year now. Left the Marine Corps December of 21, so fresh and just getting to it.
So you were one of the first guests on our show, and in some sense I owe you a bit of thanks because at that time I had moved and I was trying to figure myself out in a way, not like everything, but I ran into you and we just had a couple of really good conversations, and at that time I knew it was time to get started with this project. So you were on episode 4, which was early on in our production, and so much has changed since then. It was a good time. But what is the biggest difference in Finance and Maneuver now as opposed to a year ago?
God, man, the growth has been astronomical. the entire situation to include business, my personal life, it's changed in just about every way. So to answer that question, we'd have to go in a whole lot of different directions. But what I can say is we've made a whole lot of positive impact since the beginning, since the last time you and I spoke on the record. Pretty proud of it.
Yeah, no, it's been fun watching you. It's been fun watching you do what you do, because there's always a bit of entertainment involved.
God's silliest goose, dude.
God's silliest goose. But it also reminds me, when every once in a while when I see something that you put out, it's just kind of like, it doesn't have to be competitive for me to go, I like what they did, I want to try something like that. It doesn't have to be angry and internet culture complaining. So
No, there's a lot of rising tide stuff that we're seeing right now. It seems to me that the overall perception of others' work online is much more positive. Especially in my case, I can agree with you is what I'm saying. I see a lot of work that's coming out right now that I'm super receptive of, love what a lot of people are doing in the space, and I think over the last year that's a big positive that I've seen.
Yeah, very much so. There's always going to be room for improvement or changes in opinion and things like that, but it's culture, it's community things. They have rules that seem to be solid until suddenly they're not, and then they get reestablished. And I really have come to see this time that we live in, this era, as a time between paradigms. Like, we're not really, whether you're going to address it in like a gun culture aspect or even like Americana, we seem to be in a time between times where what was once the norm kind of gave way, but the new one has not completely established itself yet, which feels like chaos to quite a few of us. It feels like madness and uncertainty. There's room for political corruption or even corporate corruption, and then it gets seen but not cared about, or cared about and not seen. And so, it's so like seeing that change as far as culture, it can become very cerebral just to talk about it. But I think it's something that we actually do genuinely care about, and it tends to stand out. And one thing that you guys have talked about for a long time is community building. Now, if you were to take community building or the community in your environment and look at it in its worst possible light, like a caricature of itself, what would you call community?
You're looking for negatives here?
First negative, like I want us to be able to come to a useful conclusion on how we think about community, as opposed, and maybe it's how we look for it, how we look at it, but also sometimes the language on community gets a little live, laugh, love, and it's like, okay, like there's genuine people involved in the environment, we are connected with one another, but we're trying to figure this out, and there's no one there, and for many of us there was no one to hold our hand.
Sure. I think a lot of what people put out there is kind of skin deep. I think that a lot of people like to preach this idea of community building or being an uplifting member of whatever niche and culture they exist in. I don't think that some people take it as seriously as they should, especially with kind of the tribulations, trials that we're seeing right now overall in the country, around the world. It seems like a lot of people just don't take it very seriously. It's a very hype word. It's thrown around a lot, and it doesn't have that deeper meaning. There's not a lot of action that follows it. That's kind of the negative that I pick up sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Since we're building this all out, we built this crazy set together. Can we get one more audio check just to make sure ears are good? He sounds good too? We're all good? Cool. I just wanted to make sure I'll cut that out. Well, no, we won't cut it out because it's what happens. This is the realist. It's just real how it gets here. So thanks very much for that one. Let's get back into this one. I know it's easy to kind of point out bad actors and people who use the term community more like a marketing buzzword than what it actually is.
Yeah, selling drama.
Sure, but and instead of like going after those people and just criticizing them and not moving on, how have you seen your perception of what community is, where you get involved in it, where you lose it, where you find it, where you build into it? How have you seen your own thought on it change?
So we've been super lucky since the beginning. We grew pretty fast from the start. 5-6 weeks in, we were already dealing with 5,000 people looking at the page, and that's cool. I think 17 or 15 weeks in was our first community event. Kind of a buzzword, but we brought 150, 200 people out there for a range day, a shooting competition, raffles. Got to work with Second Chance Canine, kick some money their way. So from really early on, we've just had incredible opportunities, and of course it takes a little bit of work, but I've been super fortunate, and so is the rest of the team in our experience. So kind of before I start listing off what we've done and the cool things that we've experienced within the community or community building from our perspective, I want to make sure that I'm able to kind of accept, the luck that we've had. Super fortunate, man.
Yeah.
From an early age, but some of the things that we've been able to do as we grow is, get together the Telegram, connect people across the country, the chapters that are around the world now, putting people together on a very basic level, allowing them to communicate with like-minded individuals, go out and do little events, training, lifting weights, driving cars, whatever it may be. But beyond that, the charity stuff, it's really cool for us. Dude, we've been super fortunate. And my idea of community building or outreach in general has begun to really expand. So I haven't completely come to conclusion of what we are capable of or what it is, what our limitations are. I think that it's ever changing. But over the last year, man, it's been bigger in my mind, the opportunities that I think we're capable of pursuing.
I've brought up Jack Donovan before a couple of times, and Jack Donovan's idea, he says, is the way of men is the way of the gang. And so as I've watched culture, as I've read literature, as I've engaged in my own desire, looking for community building or something, being a part of something, whether it's part of something bigger than yourself or just having camaraderie. You hear this from veterans all the time. It's like they miss the camaraderie of the military. And at times that brings like a double negative of like, one of them is like, you can't really get that back in the exact same way. You can recreate some of the aesthetic, but we all know that we can't have the exact same thing because we're not all going off to war again. But then also, we, like even in my case, like I found elements of camaraderie, of brotherhood in the military, but they were very, very pointed cases. It wasn't like I was in it with the boys all the time. And so when I got out of the military, I expected there to be a little bit of a void of that. I don't have my I don't have my regular anymore. I don't have the comfort of being in the AO and kind of even knowing even though it had madness, even being able to navigate that madness. I found out when I got out of the military that like it wasn't unique to veterans to feeling like they don't have anything to be a part of. And so I wanted to hear, like, how have you seen yourself get invested in community, and then how have you seen it invest itself on your own?
Dude, yeah. Getting out of the Marine Corps, the transition back was kind of a shocker. Your senior NCOs, your staff, they're always going to tell you, hey, that transition's tough. There's a lot of warnings coming out that you're not going to feel the same bond with people. You're not going to have the same closeness. You're not going to go home and be in like, the bricks with all your friends doing this, that, and whatever. So I think that my first few nights and few weeks back in Arizona after leaving Camp Pendleton it was a total shock, dude, going to the gym and realizing, okay, I'm here because I want to be here. I'm with these people because I've chosen to be with these specific people. And for me, it was a trip. It was a total trip just thinking about that. Like, okay, this is all my choice now. Yeah, I definitely understand that it's not a unique thing to service members, veterans. There's a lot of people out there who are looking for meaning, purpose, looking for a group to call their own, something that they fit in with, something with a similar purpose to their own, a similar drive, And it's very tough to find. I know there's plenty of hobbies and sports and whatever that you can get into and kind of pursue that, but what can we do as semi-established or those who are looking to become established people in society to build that for yourselves and for others? How do you give back? The idea that we had was to do this. Create a company that's based on supporting people, coming out and, doing financial advisory work for veterans, LEO, whatever. We've been able to build a team of CFAs and whatever to work for more than just veterans now. So financial literacy is a basis, and allowing people to kind of start handling the problems in their life. We created a method of communication for the people who enjoy what we do, who understand our movement, understand what we believe in. We put them in this big freaking group chat and then showed them how to decentralize and start their own. Get them in touch, get them working out together, get them together to shoot or whatever it may be. It's such a common problem, dude. And I hear this from my friends who did serve, didn't serve. They have no idea what's going on. And it blows my mind that so many people are afraid to just say it, say that they're lost or lonely or whatever it may be. It's for sure a problem, but it is not impossible to solve. And it is not impossible to make a difference, whether it's me just starting off or you or somebody listening to this with no social media presence. You don't have to do it, but going out and finding a way to connect people, being open with people.
It almost seems like, and it's sort of an odd observation, but gun culture has this way of describing people in groups. You've got your FUDs, you've got your Zoomers, you've got your competition shooters, whatever, and it fits all these categories, and some of them are internet-based and some of them are not, and it's just kind of crazy. But it seems like in generations past, people were almost like I saw a lot of people, or I saw what looked like the vestiges, the holdings over of communities in a sorts, that they all got around a certain thing. Like you had people who played golf together and you had people to do things together. But at that point in time, community seemed more of a given, and then the hobby was the choice. And what I think I'm seeing now is that the hobbies come and go, and people build, or the interests come and go. They change, they evolve, but people are looking for a community first. Like, I don't want a gun culture community. I want people to spend time with.
Yeah.
And so when you have this ambiguous thing called finance and maneuver,
Yeah.
right? You have this ambiguous thing called finance and maneuver. I find it intriguing to see how, from the outside, I know you, I visit you, I talk to you every once in a while, but I don't see what's going on behind the scenes. And I don't know what's going on, but I know you're doing something, and sometimes I just want to be a part of it, and I like that. So.
Yeah, dude. It's always good to have your company, just for the record.
Oh, well.
Behind the scenes stuff. Well, you brought up hobbies too, and community before hobbies. So I just brought my son in yesterday for jiu-jitsu for the first time. He's 3, turns 4 in a few months. He's a big kid, the size of a 5-year-old. Mom and I are both pretty tall, so got to bring him in and kind of get him surrounded by kids who are doing something kind of cool.
Yeah.
A lot of them are really dialed in. They light up, dude, when they get on the mat. And that's cool because having him surrounded by other kids who are pursuing something early on is going to get him, comfortable with being personal with people, with socializing in general at a young age. Mm-hmm. And then, tackling a hobby, kind of being able to grasp onto different things to build a personality out of. Cool. For me, when I got into jiu-jitsu, when I got into flying, even recently getting into skydiving, the hobby absolutely does pull people together, and you're going to meet a whole lot of people pursuing some kind of a new interest, whether you're building a car, taking it out to track day, whatever. Mm-hmm. You're going to meet a lot of people that become your friends, and you'll have this sense of belonging when you're there. But there's not really a simple answer to community in alignment with hobbies. Just like you said, a lot of these hobbies and interests are going to come and go. Yeah. So how do you form this circle, this family that's chosen with your hobbies that lasts? If you stop getting on the mats, you stop jumping out of planes, how do you maintain that? And I think that there's no real perfect answer, but you have to start with the basics, get out and do something, right? Mm-hmm. If you're able to go out there and do a bunch of different things that interest you and meet one good person, cool. Dude, you've got someone for life. And then the effort that it takes to maintain that is bringing these folks together to intertwine, introducing your friends to one another. So just kind of attempting to make a difference on your level, connecting folks that you think are going to get along.
Well, let's just take the gun culture as a topic that
Sure.
is in some ways a lot of this show tends to be centered on. The gun culture is certainly a group of people with collected interests, but they also they feel a lack of community. And so in that old world example, and when I mean old world, I mean like the 1970s, the 1980s, it seemed like when we look back at time, it feels like community was a given. Whereas like community was a given in your industry, in your interests, and now that's certainly not the case.
We're going to start talking 15-minute cities here.
We can, 15-minute cities are a libertarian's dream because they're like, oh, you mean I have to pay for the roads, but I still can't use them?
Oh, yeah. I love it, dude. I love strip malls.
Yeah.
Lots. Anyways.
But I mean, it fits your it fits your aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but so like the point that I'm saying with that one is that at one point in time, it might be a false nostalgia.
Okay.
But there seems to be this nostalgia for a time before now that comes and goes. But this nostalgia kind of pops up, and we live in 2023, and it's like the age of nostalgia. Marketing is nostalgia. Movies are nostalgia.
Sure. Everything
is something that it's trying to recreate the memory or the feeling of a memory that may never even existed, really. And so I want to be clear on this one. One thing for certain is that if community was ever a given, that is not the case. But we may not want to be so certain that it ever was a given, because that kind of cheapens the potential of pursuit, I guess is the other way of saying it.
I can agree with you. I couldn't tell you what things were like in the 50s in suburbia. I couldn't tell you how communicative neighbors were with each other. I couldn't tell you from a first-person perspective how well everybody knew each other within their little communities, their living areas. So to try and relate to that right now, it's tough for me. It's impossible. So to make the comparison, between now and then is very tough for me individually. However, of course we can drive on like livable wages. People aren't making, in comparison to what they need to make, as much now. A lot of people are much more focused on career. I think the energy in the country's changed quite a bit, and self-worth is a tougher thing to earn nowadays. People are very busy chasing titles as opposed to chasing being close to their neighbors. But I don't know that I could say that community is not as strong anymore. I don't think that I could sit here and confidently say that community now versus then is not as strong or not comparable. I think that we're really fortunate to live in the time that we are. Granted, there's some serious problems, but there always have been, there always will be. I think right now how interconnected the world is an absolute blessing in some cases. And I think that with a little bit of effort, we are able to accomplish a lot more for ourselves and our, first off, our self-worth, our sense of connectivity to others. Social settings, how often we get together with people, how much we can talk to people, how to reach out for help. I think that right now having access to 70,000 people at my fingers is probably a super generous thing. Versus having my suburban neighborhood in 1950 and relying on talking to the one neighbor that I'm close to potentially.
Yeah, and hot.
Smoking too much, so.
I would agree with that one. It's sometimes, but it seems to sometimes have the inverse effect too, where the access to think about it, one of the challenges that we deal with social media, even as a thing, is that having access to so many people almost comes with the assumption of no connectivity.
Sure, yeah. Sometimes interactions are tedious and feel kind of surface level. Sometimes it's tough to gauge if somebody cares by the DM.
Yeah, and part of what I think is going on there is I think we're learning how to deal with it and recognizing when I remember when emails were kind of a new thing.
AIM too.
AIM. Yep. I remember AOL and stuff, and it doesn't mean that I remember observing it, because when I was young, my mother taught me how to write letters, and so when people started writing emails, they wrote emails like they wrote letters. Yeah. And now we don't do that at all.
I still do, but I'm acoustic as shit, so.
Yeah, acoustic.
Artistic.
We're gonna stick with acoustic. But But no, so how I'm saying that is we don't really write emails the same way. Like, it's not a 5-paragraph email for everything like, how are you doing, and please tell me about your life, and this is what happened to me. We use emails so much more like data driven. I need this information. I want to schedule a thing with you. And then in some ways, like even in my own life, I when I'm trying to communicate with somebody in the way that I would originally communicate in the form of a letter, I write a letter. I don't write an email. And so email differentiated itself from physical mail, like online articles have differentiated themselves from print articles, and communications through social media is newer than all of those things. And so now it's like sometimes I reach out in DMs and I'm trying to accomplish this thing, but it always, if it needs to get deeper, will always lead to something deeper. So like text messages, phone calls, we have all these different ways to communicate to each other. If I want to talk to you, I can write you a letter. I can drive to your house. I can
kick the door down.
I can breach and clear. I learned how to do that once. I can email you. I can call you. I can DM you. I can text you.
Send me a Snapchat.
Send you a Snapchat. Send you all these other kind of things. And so the thing that social media oftentimes becomes is this item of animosity, and oftentimes for good reason. But sometimes we just got to like figure out what we're doing with it.
I mean, I don't want to be too comparative with you and go back to the same talking point, but what's the difference between a DM and seeing your neighbor in the supermarket 60 years ago? And having a very brief surface level conversation about the kids and what's going on in school and the latest drama with one of the neighbors that people like to talk about. Is that really more wholesome and connected than what we're doing online? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's up to the individual to put in the effort to decide how seriously they're taking these communications. Maybe it's on you when you send that DM or respond to a message to somebody who likes your show. Maybe it's on you to decide how interactive and how genuine you want to be with them. And maybe it's on them to do the same. I think that there's a certain responsibility to maintain who you are, how you want to come off, and how you want to interact with people, whether you're online or off. I think it's everybody's choice on a regular basis. So, of course, we can feel disconnected. And of course, it can feel not as real. But if it's real to you and you're talking to the right person that reciprocates that genuine, conversation that you're putting out, I don't know, dude, I think it's just as real. I think it's important to like be able to talk to people in person still and not just like
so with
Snapchat.
with your platform, not your platform, but with your, you have your chapters and your communications.
Sure.
I would assume it's something like this. Somebody disconnected enters in, and then they start going and doing things.
Oh, dude, they filter them out fast. If you're not going to get into that gear and come out and do something with us, if you're not going to be the person to get involved and come to the gym, come to the shooting range, we're all going to Barbie soon. We're all going. The Arizona chapter's all going out in our merch. We're going to go see Barbie, like just stupid. But those
you guys
dudes,
are dumb. But
yeah,
that's
we were
great.
really dumb. Those dudes who have no genuine interest in connecting and are just there to like BS and drop a couple memes, like they get filtered quick, dude.
I think that's always what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. Anyone who's not there to be there, and this happens in multiple environments. And in the military is actually still a good example there, of there's a certain attitude when you're there of like, especially I have to speak specifically in special operations. Like when I got in, there was this attitude. I was told this thing very quickly. Like I passed selection, and I was told very quickly that something like, oh, you think you passed selection? That's not how it works here. You have to prove your worth every day.
Yeah.
And I did not like that. I thought what that felt like to me was another like another case of you're never there. You're never part of the team. You're never integrated. And what it turned out as I grew older and I observed it, and I had to like put away. I had to get rid of like bitterness, and I became very resentful of this idea. And even if I didn't, even if I wasn't like intentionally showing it, people could see it. And until I got over my resentment and my ego of that, it was difficult to integrate with any sort of team, because it's like, you might call it entitlement, you might call it all these other different things, but I had this attitude of, when am I actually here? When really what was being told to me is that you always have to prove, you always have to show up, you always have to do this, and as soon as you think that you can coast in Ranger Battalion,
Ride that title.
as soon as you think you can ride that title, people start to notice.
Oh yeah.
And it can feel like you never get a chance to rest, but what really you start feeling like is, I'm too good to be here, or I don't really want to pay the dues anymore. I don't want to be a part of the team anymore.
Yeah, dude, we've we've all seen those people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been that guy.
Yeah, I have too.
So like, and had to correct it, and
Yeah.
it's a good place to be, to learn to correct that. So as that even translates to culture outside, let's even go back. We can even go back into gun culture. I find myself, when I isolate myself, and then I complain about community, I'm kind of being the problem.
Sure.
I'm definitely being the problem. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't feel like I'm connected. Okay, maybe you need to put down some of that ego and just go and spend time with people. And it's always better. Every time. Every time I put down the ego and I get out the door, it's just better.
Touch grass.
Touch grass, as we say. Yes.
Touch grass.
The great philosophical statement of our day: go out and touch grass. So
Bare feet.
let's do a quick change here. You've brought up the financial practice thing, and what like. When I think of financial practice, I have this image of like a stodgy guy that tells me about things that I have no way to understand it, and then I leave more confused than I started, except for that I'm supposed to have a 401k.
Yeah, I'm actually here to sell you a product now.
Yeah, do it.
Believe it or not.
Yep. Like when you're talking to veterans and you started that way and you started like what
do?
What is finance? What is your what is your
do? I
Yeah.
got you. Yeah, dude. So, left the Marine Corps, was door dashing. Hated it, dude. Couldn't stand myself. Couldn't stand what I was doing. And my dad actually put me on. He had a recommendation for a place that he was working across from. He was doing MLO work, so loan origination, home stuff. Sent me over to financial practice that was right across the hall. Told me, hey, you know, a lot of these licenses you can do unaffiliated with college. It's like, cool. And I walked in there and asked him a few questions, sent my resume over, and I specifically wanted to know what their veteran outreach was like. So I'm not sure how well you remember it, but you know, thrift savings plan, TSP. Did you guys deal with those at all?
Yeah, it was like,
Military 401k almost.
I mean, it was a military 401k, but it was like it was given to you. You
Kinda
had
shitty though.
Oh well, you had to open it up in basic training, and then you just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, we got screamed at. Told to sign the paperwork, threw all of it in the G fund, which I think last year was like 1.3% return. And you let it sit there at a 5 or 10% contribution, and 5%'s matched, and you walk out of the military and maybe you got like 15, 18K in there. That's cool. If you do your one term and get out. So if we've got like millions of people out there right now with 15, 20K just sitting there with no idea what to do about it, it's growing real slow. It's in the G fund, hasn't been touched, hasn't been thought about. They can't take loans against it. They can't pull it out until a certain age. They can't use it for a down payment on a home. Not that every veteran needs to because of VA, whatever. But okay, what's that for? What was that? What was the point of that? So I walked into this practice, kind of asked them what they were doing for veterans, if they were familiar with the TSP. Resounding no. Told them that I would like them to help me establish my licensing process. And establish my own little workspace and, you know, my thing within their organization. They were down with it.
Cool.
Went in and started with insurance, hate it, and then figured out a way to market specific to veterans with TSPs and bringing them in for financial advisory work under the care of CFAs that work next to me. And eventually wound up stepping away from that to pursue FM full-time. Use FM as a platform to bring in veterans for free financial advisory work. The CFAs over there make money on the back end if they are managing actively money. But the goal of this is not to bring people in for a sale. It's to like, hey, come in here. You haven't thought about your TSP in many years. This is a TSP 70 form. This is how you can pull it out, put it in an eligible account like an IRA. And all of a sudden you can choose what that money's in. You can choose what to do with it. You can take a loan against it that's, you know, you're paying interest yourself. You can use it as a down payment on your first home. You can use it to start a business, whatever, you know. So This is something that I don't make money from, but we still market it. We do it for veterans and just general followers of the page now because we have the bandwidth for it,
Okay.
and that's what we do.
Yeah, because it is weird to see, but it makes sense from a military thing. Like, you take young guys, and you're learning so many things so quickly.
Yeah.
You've got
I didn't learn anything.
Well,
in boot camp, dude.
you didn't learn anything? Nothing
I
about
learned
you?
how to walk, bro. I had no idea about finance. I was a good walker.
Yeah,
Turned really good, dude.
Let's just call it, whether you like it or not, you're learning something, because now you're adapting to whatever you used to do in life.
Yeah.
So like this, there are rules and there's cultural expectations, and you got to memorize all this stuff that you may or may never use, and it is what it is. But like, I do remember that distinctly of like basically of being in basic training, which wasn't really that difficult, and I was an infantry guy. It wasn't like basic training itself wasn't difficult as far as like the tasks. Yeah, right. I'm an infantry guy, and you're like flex, but I remember the tasks themselves not being the difficult part. It was everything else.
Sure.
It was why are we being yelled at? To we know there's no winning here, but we're gonna figure it out anyway. To like watching everybody else in the bays make their decisions, and
Yeah, you're super analytical and think a lot, so I had a similar issue.
and it was so like, and then you got to do this TSP thing, and it's like
Whatever, dude.
you don't know what it is at all. Like, you know what it is because you know it's like, oh, it's a savings account, it's not even a savings, it's a retirement account, and it's just like, I don't expect the military to hold people's hands through that because
Sure.
there's no way you're gonna do it. But like, maybe just the way that I think maybe some of the culture of the military is willing to forego wise financial choices for all the other things that they have to deal with,
Camaro.
and then eventually it becomes a problem, right?
Sure.
You know, and so but again, that's not something unique to the military. It's like, you're going to school now. You get out of high school, you go to school, and then suddenly you're taking on all this debt, and you're not sure what you're learning. Maybe you are, but the thing that you're missing is, how do I actually turn this into what it's supposed to become? So it's interesting to hear that in the financial side of, you know, maybe I don't know, for veterans who have been out for a while and they haven't touched their TSP,
Or they just have terrible financial issues overall.
but like, when is it too late to touch that and fix it?
Dude, it's like the whole better late than never thing. Just, you got to do it. So for us, just kind of popping out of nowhere, and we make this crazy video, and you're like, who are these freaking guys? Like, what do they do? Who are they? What are their backgrounds? And then you watch our story, and it's like, hey, free financial work. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the TSP thing. We're doing anything planning, anything advisory related. So you're going to buy a home. You want to, consolidate your debt, which we don't do a lot of. It kind of outsource it, but we do the planning on it. You want to refinance or whatever, which again, we pretty much outsource. But you have this idea of where you want to be, and you don't know how to get there, and you're freaking, again, lost and confused that nobody wants to admit. You see our story, you're like, I don't know these dudes, but they make cool stuff. Maybe I trust them. It's free. What do I have to lose? And you pop in there, and you like get some really good advice, sets you straight a little bit. At the very least, gives you something to think on.
Yeah.
And maybe down the line, 2-3 years, maybe you're really slow about it. Maybe it clicks, dude, and maybe you finally get after it. And then financial literacy starts to build, and oh my God, you're free. You're a free person eventually. Mm-hmm. Or at the very least, you improve your position. You can take care of yourself better, your son, your daughter, your wife, whatever it may be. You can pursue a new hobby. You can find some community because you can afford to skydive.
Buy a house.
Yeah.
Start homesteading.
Yeah, dude.
Buy a house.
Mm-hmm. Grow corn in your
So while this is not like financial advice question, there is a kind of cultural. Every once in a while, I find myself doing this, saying, "Okay, it looks like these economic things are happening, and it's not going to turn out well." And in some ways, that feels like a breath of fresh air. Like, I don't need to think about this thing that's been bothering me anymore.
Tear it all down.
Yeah. Like
the credit card companies and Fight Club.
Do you understand the sort of pseudo cultural concept of the doomer?
Accelerationism, almost. So like kind of hoping the problem will come up faster and tear itself apart, and you can laugh at the system or whatever. I get it. I understand the plight. I understand the thought, but is it realistic? Dude, I don't know.
It's nothing new. I mean, you had the preppers of the 90s.
That's kind of the cool thing, we're themed after bank robbery and we do all this wild media, and we bring in these angsty people.
Are you just themed after bank robbery?
We're just themed after it, dude.
I have a
It's
history
not,
of bank robberying in my family, I found out.
We'll talk about it offline. Yeah, I don't know, we have this wild angsty theme and we bring in some wild angsty people. That's cool because we can be the ones to say, okay, accelerationist, doomer or not. Maybe you love for the idea of, you long for the idea of Fight Club coming true and somebody blows up all these credit card companies. I get it, but maybe we should do something to better our situation in the now.
Yes.
And we can be the people who are like, we get you.
Yep.
I hate banks. I hate it. I hate multinational corporations. I really do. I hate that all the food companies are owned by one company and BlackRock and this and that, whatever talking point we can think about. But maybe we should in the now do something to better our situation instead of thinking, foaming at the mouth, it's going to come down one day, because realistically all you're doing is putting off the problem, ignoring it, pretending it's not real, and pointing the finger back at the people that are doing this to you saying, whatever, but it's going to affect you.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you may accomplish the task of finding who to blame, but that doesn't make
that's super awesome. Yeah.
It doesn't make your situation
No,
better.
not at
It
all.
It doesn't put you in a better place.
Now it's kind of important to handle things now, and adapt to the situation as it stands and kind of pursue betterment. Know yourself and seek self-improvement. I know that line probably isn't going to hit you as hard as some people listening to this, but
No, it does. It
you
comes and
have a
goes, but it is interesting because I have seen that shift.
I was making a Marine joke.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know you Marines. I mean, I didn't know you guys were literate.
Yeah, dude.
You know, like I did.
Especially financially, right?
Well,
Camaros and Chargers and whatever.
yeah, I think that's just a young military guy thing. Every base has got this skeezy.
I bought a 4-banger Tacoma, and that thing was awesome, dude. I spent more money on surfboards than anything, I think. But yeah, some of us are literate. Some of us can do money things.
Yep.
Some of us care. It's cool.
No, it does. So, improve. That is something that I've appreciated in seeing shifts in culture. Is that there's a lot more focused on, while there is a long-term vision of what that might look like, I'm not sacrificing my long-term vision for what I would like my life to be like. I'm not sacrificing that on the altar of cheap, temporary motivation of being encouraged by the doom of things.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, though.
It's attractive. It's
I love
alluring.
these wild TikTok edits,
Yeah.
conspiracy theories and stuff, and
It just
gets me going, dude.
it's entertaining. So
But I'm still working every day, and I try to encourage people to do the same and build a better life, because if we're stuck playing the game and we're not necessarily in control, why not play it to the best of your abilities and also have a contingency, still keep yourself strong, go out and, train and
yeah, it's the
have
same.
your gear and just in case.
It's this thing that comes up very often, is that having some form of self-sufficiency does not necessarily require external motivation. I don't need to build a timeline of what all the doom that's going to happen to justify, even morally justify, being a little bit more interconnected with my community, being a little bit more self-sufficient, so that maybe if nothing else, I'm not a burden on the system.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, that takes some real knowing yourself and doing your best, which I think that a lot of people still need a little bit of a push to get into that mindset. But yeah, that's cool.
We're making progress.
I mean, even to an extreme, dude. These people are like, well, I can't wait for this and that to happen so I can go into the woods and homestead and just. And it's like, okay,
Well, just go do it.
why not just pursue a new career, or look towards that raise, or start that company you're thinking of, and it's probably a good thing to talk about at some point, starting a business. But maybe if somebody like me, who's a complete idiot, can start a company that's doing pretty all right, maybe you can. Maybe you're smarter than me. You're probably smarter than me.
What did it for you? What was the exploration of starting a business? What was that like?
It was tough.
I mean,
It was fun.
Because I remember we barely brought this up earlier. I remember reading books like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, or Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
Or some of these other books that I remember reading some of these books where the only impression that I felt like I was left with was, well, I tend to be left with two impressions. One, it's too late for me. I can't possibly figure that out. Or I don't really get what you did. I just I just read a book of you telling me about
How to have a proper mindset.
that you got, or like, or some sort of kind of pseudo mystical garbage.
All right, now what?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
no, dude. Like, here's the thing. It's kind of like,
How do I start an LLC?
but like, yeah. You'll get some of that thing. Like, oh, here's an example. Like, when I was younger, I remember hearing, this kind of financial model going something like this. If you invest in a mutual fund that has a 14% return year after year, by the time you're 55 or whatever it is, you're going to have $2 million in the bank. Well, that's great, but I haven't seen many mutual funds at all in my lifetime, because I turned 18 right around the time of the '08 crash, and now I'm older, and we're seeing another economic heyday.
That's like not even talked about this big issue that we're having right now.
Well, it's I mean, whether the economy right now is doing good or bad, or whoever wants to turn it into a political conversation, doesn't mean anything to me. What it meant, what the issue that I was given is, I was given a roadmap that didn't seem to exist. Like, oh, if you can just invest in a mutual fund that gives you 17% year after year, and I'm like looking around and finding 6%, 4%, and it's like, oh, it doesn't even matter then.
It was like the memes of like my parents at 30 buying a home.
Oh yeah,
It's like me at 30, and it's like playing with a spear.
Yeah.
Like I got a new gun.
Yeah.
Rolling around in the back of the van like I live here.
My parents at 30, my parents at 30 having 3 kids and buying a home. Me at 30, I've got a really nice set of plate carrier
These
and night
eggs
vision.
are expensive as shit.
Yeah, well, it might be like hobbies and being corrected, but it just, I can see where the doomer comes out of it, but I think there's a way out of it that we have to figure out. And in many ways, it just comes up to us to do it. Like, you can't expect.
I have a good solution.
Go ahead.
It's just local credit union.
Oh, okay.
Tell them you want money.
There you go. And
it works, dude.
How do you tell them you want money?
On a note.
On a note. Dude, is a ski mask involved?
You don't need one. Wear a low hat. Don't bring a gun. It's an extra charge. No die packs. No marked bills. Yeah, dude, I don't know. As the times change, a lot of options a lot of doors will shut. And the idea that your parents had 20, 30 years before you may not be viable to you, but there certainly always is a way. You brought up the how to win friends and influence people. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've got this mindset down. I really read this book hard. I read it super hard, and I get it for sure. What now? And it's just kind of getting started, man. Whether that means filing your LLC and, okay, now I can catch some tax breaks in the meantime, in the interim, while I'm thinking of a business plan. Or maybe you just figure out a way to turn your passion, your interests into a job. Mm-hmm. Do it. Pursue it. Reach out. Ask people that run a business. Ask me. Reach out. DM me. I don't care. I've done it before. I've sat on the phone until 4 a.m. talking to friends, talking to people I didn't know about starting a business. But I think the first step is not necessarily reading these books and, okay, now I've got the mindset, now what, and sitting there sulking or thinking on it for a long time, but just kind of asking somebody who's done it recently, or at least done it, starting to figure out an idea. I think that half of becoming your own boss or starting a business is just figuring out what you love. And for me, I don't know how I figured out that I like clothes that are really simple and have a cool meaning, or photography. I never would have thought I'd get into photography or videography. Dude, I love it. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. Little iPhone shots, sitting up on the mountain today. Like, take a couple pictures, and I'm Visco doing filters. Dude, I love it. So what do you love? How do you pursue it? How do you monetize it? And then for me, me as a person, something that I care about deeply, how do I make a positive impact in conjunction with the improvement of my life, my financial situation?
Do you run into this idea of like a positive impact becoming something that people say but they're not genuine about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's plenty of people who are kicking money from their huge sales to charities that their buddies run. Of course, bro. I mean, you're always going to see negatives right next to the positives, but is it a huge issue? No. I think there's plenty of people out there making a great impact and doing good things, and I think we see more and more of it every day, and it makes me happy. It's tough sometimes to have that positive outlook on life and the human condition and whatever, man-made horrors beyond my comprehension mindset, whatever. But dude, I think a lot of people are out there doing a really good job every day and giving back. And I think that we see more and more people doing it regularly. Even if you look at, little apparel brands in the gun industry, dude, they're popping up every day. And what do? They find a charity to latch onto. Cool.
Yeah, perhaps charities, especially veteran-based charities, are like reinventing themselves.
That's a tough conversation too, just veteran-based charities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you want to just dig into it.
There's a lot of them, and we have no idea what a lot of them do.
Yeah, I would agree. And some of those things are, I don't know what they do, but I don't even know what they could do. Like we're exploring. In some ways, it seems like we're exploring new territory again, and for good reason too. If there was supposed to be, maybe it was the foolishness of veterans to think that the federal government was going to help them in any way. And it's not as
it makes me laugh. Obviously, I feel very bad about the situation, especially with VA, this and that. But
well, it doesn't have to be
fucking terrible.
It doesn't have to be just couched in a criticism of the government. Maybe putting your hope in a centralized bureaucracy is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Especially in our day and age now. Like, decentralization is an important subject to us, especially here at Redacted. I mean, the idea of our company, the idea of Redacted, was that we were looking at the gun control problem, and we were focused so much on the idea that the government would be like, that there would be some sort of new regulations or there'd be some sort of prohibitions against something that we consider to be a virtue. The gun culture views firearms ownership as a virtue. It's a good thing to do. It means you're taking responsibility. It means you're investing in your community. And there's more to it, especially now, that is much less atomized. So, you could even go back 10 years ago, and in our memory of this time feels like every ad is about the single not the single father, but like the man protecting his home. He's like, oh, there's a break-in and I need to defend my life. Or a person, and so much of the gun culture was focused on that scenario. The scenario of an individual who has chosen to own a firearm to defend his life. And now it's very different than that. And I think we've re-engaged in the virtue of that.
Sure.
So much deeper. But so it goes back to this idea of decentralization in the sense of perhaps putting our hope in large monolithic structures that are centralized and bureaucratic is not effective for us as people. And what we're seeing, why we find disappointment in some veteran charities is that they could be that, but somehow they're not.
Sure.
I
mean, it's the same issue as anything else. We were talking about the conversation in the grocery store versus your DM. It starts with the individual. Mm-hmm. It's probably starts with me and you trying to make an impact instead of putting our trust elsewhere. Mm-hmm. I think it's a decision, dude. You got to make it every day, and you got to find ways to do things for yourself and those you love. If you have the opportunity and the means, go beyond who you love and care about. Just do it for who you can do it for. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of problems with 501c3s, and especially in the veteran community, profiting off our own. I know in the Marine Corps, and from what I've heard in Ranger Battalion, we like to eat our own.
There's a certain amount of cannibalism that always takes place, and as I've observed it over time, it comes and goes in waves.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the whole stolen valor thing. Is that you'll hear a case of like one stolen valor event.
I love those videos so much. Dude.
Well, I mean, they come in different varieties, but like we're talking about the egregious ones, not the ones that are tragic. Like a tragic stolen valor case is when you have like a homeless guy claiming to be like the supreme general of the Martian army, and you're like,
it's badass.
Like that's where do I enlist? Yeah. I'm doing my part.
Oh, dude,
fight the bugs.
Yeah.
But I see it in that case of like the real egregious cases of stolen valor is not somebody who is dealing with a mental health issue, but is somebody who is profiting off of a reputation he doesn't have.
Yeah.
And so when that comes out, and it usually comes out pretty big, then oftentimes there's like this cascading effect of like now everyone is suspect, and it sorts itself out and it calms down a little bit, and then another case pops up, and then it sorts itself out, and then it just kind of there's
Yeah.
this spike in it, and I wonder if veteran charities are undergoing that right now.
Yeah, I think so, probably. We've been lucky to be clicked up with a good one with Second Chance, and Travis, dude, we're super, super fortunate. But
What's the what does Second Chance do?
they go out and rescue mals specifically. They train these pups, get them better, from whatever they were dealing with. Grow them into service dogs, basically working dogs, and pair them with soft vets with PTS, TBIs, people who need kind of a special company, a little bit of assistance.
Mm-hmm.
They do pretty good work. I mean, the reason I felt comfortable working with them, and we were just talking about like these other 501c3s that have issues. Dude, Travis and the team were flying across the country and using their personal credit cards to rescue these dogs, train them, bring them back. And we had the opportunity to jump in and write them a 5-figure check. Sent them $30K like 4 weeks ago. Don't have to do that anymore.
Yep.
Cool. We're greenlit. I trust you. I think you're doing a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
We got fortunate. But yeah, I mean, there's cycles and everything. The whole classic Roman meme where the 4 cycles.
The Roman meme, the 4
Yeah,
cycles,
yeah,
or this is the strong men meme.
Yeah.
It's not Roman.
Whatever, dude.
It's Strauss-Howe generation theory. I read.
I say Roman meme because it's always got the
It's always got the Romans.
fall
in it.
of Rome.
It's always got the fall of Rome.
Some
I think
Romes.
sometimes we're a little too obsessed with the fall of Rome that we're trying to find parallels instead of finding solutions.
We haven't had a whole lot of massive empires, in the span of 10,000 years that are recorded. Rome's pretty cool. I get it.
I mean, we've had the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the English Empire, the Russian Empire.
What?
Right?
The English. Ugh.
Oof. Oof. I mean, they brought trade to the world.
Like censor the word.
Oh, yeah, English. Oh, well. I guess it's bad to be English now. Oh, well. So.
What were we talking about?
Well, we somehow got back to Strauss-Howe generation theory because that seems to be a common talking point, but it is
Cyclical, yeah.
I mean, the cycles of time are interesting when you look at it that way because there is always this question of is it descriptive or is it prescriptive?
I don't know.
And descriptive would be like we see these cycles and it's an observation, whereas prescriptive is sort of we're attaching some sort of law-like recreation to it. So law-like, not like law as in governing law, but like law of nature.
Sure.
A prescriptive description or prescribing this idea of cycles and cycle theory would be saying that they always repeat. They always repeat in the same way every time. And I have some issues with that because it also sort of it makes acceptable this mindset that we just let it happen again. Instead of thinking, well, if we change our ways a little bit and learn from those mistakes, we get better off. So, mankind is doomed to make similar errors over and over and over again, but that's mankind as a whole.
I know I do, man.
Maybe we can try to make changes in our own life.
Yeah. Decentralization.
Well, decentralization comes across in many ways. To those who are focused on empire, it looks a lot like ruin. If you think the country's falling apart, maybe your opinion on the United States is a little centralized.
I'm pretty optimistic, man.
Huh.
My outlook's definitely changed over the last year. I think there's a lot of good come.
There will always be time, and whenever there's times of uncertainty, that's opportunity to act.
Sure.
It's always opportunity to act and take risk and seek out and build something where
There's your purpose right there.
you should be. Like,
Things kind of suck right now. Go do something.
it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be.
Now we're both feeling optimistic.
We have to.
Little hopeful guys out here, dude.
I think it's Ernest Shackleton that optimism is a moral virtue.
God's most grateful geese.
God's most grateful geese. All right, yeah. Is it Duck Duck Grey Goose or is it Duck Duck? What is it? What's the other word?
Dude, what?
Have you ever played the game Duck Duck
No.
Grey?
No.
Duck Duck Grey Duck or Duck Duck Goose?
I have no idea what's going on.
I think it's a Midwestern thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it
It's
is
a loser
the
town game.
It's a loser town game.
From Nerd State.
It's from wait, what is the Nerd State? Is it California
Wherever
now?
you're from, dude.
Wherever you're from, you're over analyzing small cultural conversations.
Duck, duck, garbage.
Duck Duck Garbage. Oh, well, then I don't want to figure out how this game goes. I don't want to figure this out. This is a terrible experience. Duck, duck, gray duck. Duck, duck, goose.
What
I
part
am
of-
being told by the what is it? The manager that we have an answer. We are denying your answer.
I don't want to hear about it. Just keep it over there.
It's statistical and verified. Okay, well, how do you evaluate those statistics? Oh, okay. It's well, we're getting off
I
topic.
can't eat pasta, dude. I'm gluten free.
You can't eat pasta. You're gluten free. But how do you? What
Linguistic.
can you? That's linguine. So let's dive back into another topic. We've talked a lot about what finance and maneuver is, and we've talked a little bit about what some of your outlook on. If we were to pull away from the world of brands and companies and dig and get away from just the language of community, what is a lesson that you wish you had learned? Well, I guess you've only been out of the military for what, a couple of years now. What were some of the lessons that you learned that you realized were not exclusive to veterans? That
Not to chase self-worth via titles, monetary gain, and how hot of a girl you can go out with. That's what I've learned, dude. I don't know,
So-
defining self-worth to yourself, thinking about it on a daily basis and figuring out what you're genuinely worth, and not, chasing this and that and accomplishments and how people feel about you at the bar and who wants to go home with you.
So I enjoy pursuing accomplishments, but they generally are germane to myself.
Yeah.
And so like in some ways you'll see that with like overlanding. The overlanding world is always difficult
Bunch
because
of weirdos too.
oh yeah, it's like you take like the overlanding motorcycle club. It's not even, I don't even know if there is a club, but it's like a whole bunch of people who don't want to be there. It's like a room full of motorcycle introverts, and you're like, I wish I was part of not a club, And it's interesting that you see that a lot in the overlanding world, and now we're seeing that overlap another way into like gun culture and homesteading and so many different aspects of our community. And I would like you to try to tell me what that process looks like for yourself, as far as not just self-worth in a cheesy sense, but like setting your goals for yourself, and what does that look like?
How do you stop chasing titles and wealth, and how hot of girls you can get with? I don't know, man. I think that I really calmed down as I became closer with my son. I think that when I started a company and stopped allowing others to tell me what time to go to work and did exactly what I wanted to do and did the hobbies I thought were cool, just started to calm down on my own. I don't think it's necessarily something that you have to like dial in and find these specific answers to. I think it's just something that kind of happens as you become more comfortable with yourself.
Now that sounds like one thing. That sounds like one thing in a sense, and this is even going to come across as strange, but yeah, you're getting the brunt end.
I'm dying, dude.
You're getting the brunt end of the smoke deal here.
I quit smoking like 2 days ago, and I'm taking this.
Well, let's kick the fire then. But so I'm going to ask this question, and then I'm going to fix the fire. It can come across a little disingenuous to say something like that. It can come across. Now, doesn't mean
Sounds
that
like a Carnegie book.
It can come across. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying that it can come across as a little disingenuous.
Yeah.
To say, to kind of give that advice when you're already on the other side. You're not done. Finance and maneuver is not over. You haven't made it, in that sense, right? Like it's
no,
not.
dude, not
It's
at
not
all.
like and I think and I appreciate that mentality. It doesn't seem like you're chasing a title, but it can come across as a little disingenuous or feel like it's disingenuous from somebody who is not already in your position.
Yeah.
And how and are there times where you've been shocked into that? Is that even a thing? How would you address that while I stir the pot?
Are there times that I've been shocked into receiving advice from disingenuous people?
No.
Or being led to answers that don't necessarily solve the problem? I don't know. So, no, I haven't made it. We haven't made it as a team. The company hasn't made it. We're not at a point where it's like, okay, we can sit back and just kind of chill out and write our book about success and business and read this, buy this, go to work and learn nothing from it. and we continue to profit. It's just a secondary business model probably, but no, we haven't made it, dude. There's still days where I'm so concerned with how the page and the business are doing overall that when I wake up, I want to delete it. I want to delete my phone apps and just stop. There's periods of time where I don't want to touch a camera, go out and film or do this, that, and whatever, come up with designs. I don't want to put the finance stuff out there. I just don't want to do it. There's definitely still a lot of concerns and growing pains that dealing with. We still fulfill out of the house. It's two of us that do fulfillment, and sometimes we bring out like the local guys from the Arizona chapter to help us fold. So we're definitely still small, but we're feeling it out. And I guess in my mind, what kind of separates us from those giving disingenuous answers is that we're sitting here willing to tell you about SEO, willing to tell you to, do this to build your website properly. I've built websites for other companies out there. How do you make a successful design that sells better? How do you organize this? How do we successfully give away night vision? It's like, okay, I'll tell you. I will tell you exactly how we do it. And I've done it. I've sat on the phone with people that, again, I've never met before, that are just from Instagram direct messages, that are thinking of doing something, and tell them what I've learned and what mistakes that I made in the beginning.
I think I just revoked my Boy Scout card.
Dude,
I just turned a smoke pit into a smokier pit.
They made you an E3 for this?
They made me an E3. What? Yes, they did. They made me an E3 for having for doing the Boy Scout thing.
I'm demoting you.
You're demoting? You can't demote me. You're not in my direct chain of command. All right. Well, here, let's do that then. Due to environmental circumstances, we're going to take a break.
EPA, dude.
But which is also good because we're at that time frame. So let's take a break. Let's do and let's come back for part 2 here in a minute. So before we get completely smoked out by the fire, where do people find you? How do they get a hold of you? And where do we go from here?
Just message me on Instagram or hop on the website and hit me up via the contact form. Ask me whatever stupid question you have. I don't care how dumb it is. Just ask. You have big dreams and you don't know what to do. Just, okay. I have 70,000 people on the page right now, probably 1,800 messages a day. I do my best to, at the very least, read and, double tap to show that I read it. Every single message, if I don't respond, if it's a genuine question or like informing me of some big life change or accomplishment, I'm going to respond to you every single time. So what are you missing out on if you just reach out with your really stupid question? At the very least, you're going to make me laugh, and I'm going to let you know.
You are the silliest goose.
God's silliest goose, dude.
You'll make it, though. I appreciate it.
Maybe.
Well, let's take a break for the first half of this interview with Finance and Maneuver. This has been the Redacted Culture Cast. This is where we have some of those fireside chats, but the goal of this channel has always been to dig into some of the deeper questions and what we think about, especially when we think about what is right and true and good. And so as much as we build into our theatrics and we try to have fun with it, we really do appreciate the time that you spend with us in conversation. And just as Jordan here's got a really great platform and really great conversations going in his arena, we're always glad to be a part of it when we can. So thank you very much for being on the show. And let's get ready for part 2, and I'll try to fix the fire.
The ducks at the park are free, and you can just take them.
That is closing advice. All right. You can find us at redactedllc.com. We're going to have merch up there as well. And then if you want to support the channel, you can head over to redactedculture.locals.com. That's where you find our backside. That's where you find our black site, which is where we have
what was the link again? For the backside.
Yeah, right. That's where you find our black site, where we have our backside conversations, which doesn't make it any better. But if you want to have discussions about some of the things that come up on the show, that's going to be the best place to do it, because that's where we get to host and get deep in the weeds.
You've stoked my intrigue.
I have stoked your interest. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Keep your hatchet sharp and your powder dry.
Ducks at the park are free.